and welcome to the next episode of L'Exclusive, the podcast created by PaperStreet Web Design and Marketing. As always, I'm your host, Nancy, the Client Relations Manager here at PaperStreet. And today I'm joined by Alex, our VP and Internet Marketing Director. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
And I'm also joined by David, our SEO Manager. David.
Hello.
Today we're doing a little bit of a different format today. So if you're used to listening to us on just via a podcast format, that's great. We're going to continue to do that for you. But lately we have been putting our podcast on YouTube as well. So you can find us on YouTube at PaperStreet Web Design and Marketing. And you can always find our podcasts on paperstreet.com. With that in mind, we're going to actually share our screen today because we're talking about a topic that's very, very important for anyone really who's using their website to promote their business or their law firm. We're going to be talking about Google Analytics. So today, as I'm with my SEO gurus here at PaperStreet, we're going to be walking you through different aspects of Google Analytics, talking about why you need it, what you need to consider, and we'll just take it from there. So like I said, if you want to listen via the podcast, we're happy to do that, and that's how we'll always be doing it. But you can also check us out at YouTube and paperstreet.com. All right, everybody, let's get started and just break down why our listeners need to know about Google Analytics. What is it? Why is it important? And what is it used for?
Sure. So I'll start. And with that, not to overstate the obvious, but I think nowadays most people probably know what Google Analytics is. But in case someone does not, it is essentially a free product that Google offers to track the traffic of your website, essentially. And to analyze that traffic and look at it as far as its behavior and everything. The purpose is just as you could probably imagine. It's understanding where that traffic is coming from, how many people have visited the site, what we refer to as the attribution of that traffic, meaning did they come from social media? Did they come from search engines? Did they come from referral links? Where did that information come from? And how did they find the site? One of the beauties, I think, of this product, and we always kind of say this to especially our SEO marketing and digital advertising clients, don't be fooled by the fact that Google is giving us this product out of the kindness of their hearts. It's actually what a wonderful way for them to be able to dynamically track the metrics for a website than to be able to look at this data themselves. In other words, something that we'll talk about later on, but how are users responding to the site? How long are they staying on the site? Are they bouncing away from the site? Those sort of things. And they track that, and we can see that. And so that's, kind of an ancillary side of it all. But really what we do and what we're going to focus on, I think, mostly in this discussion is just how we analyze user behavior, which is, the beauty of analytics is that it allows us to track how users and visitors navigate throughout the site. So again, what pages that they have viewed and for how long, as I mentioned, and probably most importantly, which we track quite diligently, is the conversion side. What actions did they take? Did they fill out a contact form? Are they clicking on specific links? Are they clicking on mobile phone numbers? Things like that. So really, as that kind of then relays into it, it's more about the measuring of the marketing effectiveness is really particularly what David and I, being on the SEO team, focus on mostly. And from there, again, it's how do the business owners, how do the law firm owners see if their marketing campaigns are driving the traffic to the site that they want to see. And that's really what it comes down to it. So, and it's not even necessarily just driving the traffic, but that traffic is then converting. So from there, as you could imagine, there's this wonderful benefit where we can then look at things of how do we improve the site's performance based on that analytical information. So again, it might be, as I mentioned earlier, understanding and comprehending, even though we have an intention of how somebody is using the site, we can analytically see how they're using the site. Are there things that we can do to improve that user experience and how well they're doing? And then, what most importantly, we can then kind of determine what the desired action is of a user. And so we then can highlight that or emphasize that or bolster that. And that's really fundamentally a big overview, and how that actually sets not only goals and the site behavior, but ultimately how that becomes a return on investment for a firm, not only on their website but in their marketing.
It's a great tool, like I said, for law firms and businesses, most importantly, you're going to really want to see who's contacting your firm, who called you, or who sent you an email, contacted you via your contact form, what pages they're looking at, and things like that. So it's really the best way to see who's coming to your site and what they're doing while they're there. And it's worth mentioning that any marketing agency that you use, we always hope that you use PaperStreet, but if you are using a different one, you should make sure that your marketing agency is going through Google Analytics with you. And we do encourage all of our listeners to have this basic understanding of Google Analytics, because in case you're ever wondering if your marketing team is doing all that they said they're doing, like have you seen growth? Have you seen improvements? Things like that. Like I said, your agency should be able to explain it to you and to tell you what they're doing, but it's good for you to have that as well. So you yourself can track the growth, track the potential and things like that. So it's just worth mentioning on that front. And just a small note to our listeners, like I said, most of us, we're hopeful that most of you are familiar with Google Analytics, but if you're not, we just want to offer this one caveat. Google Analytics did update itself in last year, and it became something called GA4. So quickly, can you guys just explain that really fast in case our users are a little confused if there's a difference between Google Analytics, GA4, and what they need to know about that?
Sure. It's a highly contested or, kind of touchy subject, if you will, because I would say arguably most of the community, particularly the SEO community, is not necessarily a fan of GA4, Google Analytics 4. The previous version of it was called Google Universal, Analytic or Universal Analytics, and it's quite just like anything in life. I think when there's, we all become used to something and then there's a disruption and, a change, it's tough to adjust to that change. There are some things also, there might be some benefits to it, but there's also some cons. But yeah, to your point, Nancy, it was in July of 2023 that the migration happened. And so that's an important update for everyone to know, because now when you log into Google Analytics, it will look inherently different than how it once looked prior to that. There are some, again, maybe differences of opinion about it, but we have found that it's less detailed of reports. It's not really necessarily as user friendly, I would argue, to the average person. That said, some of the benefits is it does allow very specific customization and more customization about it. But yeah, so for example, one of the things that inherently was just very easy to see in Universal was there was a pre-built option for referral traffic, and that is no longer available from that, kind of ease of use and, kind of just initial perspective. So, there is like in a way that you can actually set that up and you can modify it within existing reports. But there's also same thing for like no Google ad reports either, where you can dive down to that and you can get to that information. But again, the ease of use where you would once be able to simply click and see is no longer there. So there's a lot of other very, very granular kind of specific items like that. The naming conventions of certain things had changed and all. So just like anything, it kind of takes a little bit to get used to, but it's here to stay for a while. So I do know in Google's defense, they do listen a lot to the community, and we have seen updates happen real time, where they've been kind of fixing and updating and changing things. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll continue to happen.
Thank you for that, Alex. And let's dive right into it. Again, if you work with a very reputable web design company or marketing agency, they should be able to install Google Analytics for you. That said, if you're starting out on your own, you want to track some things on your own, we're going to quickly go over how to install Google Analytics. David, do you want to just quickly go over that for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things you do need to have, since Google Analytics is technically a Google product, is a Google account first and foremost. And within that Google account, you are going to go to the basically google.com/analytics. And if there isn't a Google Analytics account already created, it's going to basically walk you through the steps on how to do so. It's just pretty much like filling out, like setting up any type of new account on, whether you're doing it on social media or, any kind of website. So it's going to walk you through putting in your firm name, selecting, the type of website that you have, just kind of filling out some, optional information as well. And then once that's complete, Google is going to present you with a tracking code. And that's really the crucial part of the setup, is making sure that tracking code is embedded onto your website to make the connection from the website sending data to Google Analytics. So that usually requires some developer assistance, or if you are a bit tech savvy and you have sort of access to the code of your website, there is a way to just kind of copy and paste over that tracking code. If you're using WordPress, there are plugins available that you install the plugin and then you just kind of copy and paste your Google ID, your Google Analytics tracking ID into the plugin and just activate it. And then you're pretty much good to go. One other step that we do, want to check just to check that everything is functioning properly. So going back into Google Analytics, looking at the real-time user report and making sure that it's actually, seeing the traffic that's coming to the website. There's also a notification within the analytics account that it has been actively receiving data to just help you confirm that, everything is good to go. There's also some, kind of basic setup that we'll kind of get into later on with the reports. But yeah, it would be more along the lines of setting up your conversion tracking and making sure that's good to go for the conversions, for the actions that you want to track on your website, which we'll dive further into when we look at the actual reports and analytics.
All right, so let's dive right into it. Like I said, I used to be on the SEO team myself, so I'll chime in with this as needed, but I'll let my experts speak. Let's talk about the data that is most important for Google Analytics. So like I said, you downloaded the program, or even you're talking about it with your marketing team. They should be explaining these following categories to you and seeing how they're performing and what your site is doing when it comes to these particular categories. So with that, David, let's get started and we could talk about acquisition first. We've already been alluding to this, but what specifically are our users going to be interested in about acquisition?
Cool. So yeah, this is actually just for the purposes of our podcast. Google Analytics actually offers a demo account of GA4. So it allows everybody to kind of get a feel for the user interface and kind of look at data that's already been populated from This is actually the data from Google Analytics from their store. So a lot of their resource articles tend to reference their demo account. And so, we're going to use that for the purposes of this call. So starting out, I mean, as kind of Alex mentioned, this is the GA4 interface. It's definitely a bit different than the Universal Analytics, but, some things are, relatively the same, where the sidebar menu is going to kind of contain all of these reports. But something that actually is a little bit different is you have almost this initial menu first, where this is going to be sort of like your home landing page, which is like an overview dashboard of just certain they call them cards, where they want to highlight certain information for you. But going into this portion, reports is going to allow you to kind of see a lot of the reports that you're more used to seeing, looking where traffic is coming from, conversions, what pages people are viewing, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go ahead and kind of like work our way down to the sections that are relevant. And with the first one being the acquisition section. So, the name sort of alludes to the fact it's acquisition. It's how is the website acquiring visitors? So there is an overview report for every section, but we tend to like to look at the more detailed reports. So what we like to do is look at the user acquisition and traffic acquisition. So user acquisition is going to be a report based solely on how new users are finding your website. So on the left-hand column, it's going to list all of the different types of channels that a visitor can find your website, and then list all of that just accompanying information. How many new. So for Google Store, you can see the majority of their traffic of new users are finding them directly. So that's going to the website domain, just typing that in directly, whereas, the next amount of visitors are finding them through organic search. And so what's great about these reports is that, as you can see, there's other metrics, pulled in for every type of report. So we can, highlight, you basically segment out, all right, so we want to see how is direct traffic, performing versus organic. We can see the amount of time that somebody has spent engaging with the site, how it differs between the channels, even from a conversion standpoint. So we're seeing, users tend to convert 55%, from an organic search versus 21% from a direct search. So this really just gives you insight into how specific channels are performing when a new visitor is coming to the website.
Think that's perfect because, like I said, I
Yep.
think you just need to know, especially if you are pursuing a campaign like social media, SEO, pay-per-click, things like that. You're going to want to know if it's doing that way because you may think, oh, yeah, all these clients are just coming because of word of mouth referrals, which is what I hear all the time when I'm talking to our clients. Like I said, I'm a client relations manager, so I work with them a lot. And the clients will tell me, oh, yeah, it's because we're getting such good, contact from other customers and clients like that because we have word of mouth, reputation. And then I can go into their Google Analytics or the software that we use here at PaperStreet, and I'll say, well, actually, no, most of the people are coming by way of search, and may not necessarily be searching for your firm name. It may be a lawyer near them, the category near them, or even a blog, something about that's in your blogs or things like that. So it's kind of really important to take this in perspective or even consider it because, again, I think a lot of people make a mistake when it comes to where is their information or where are their customers and their clients coming from. So that was great, David.
Yeah, so under acquisition, really the two main reports are going to be user acquisition, traffic acquisition. The user acquisition, really what I mentioned is like if you want to focus on how new visitors are finding your website for the first time. But when we dive into this traffic acquisition report, this is more holistically when visitors are coming back for the second time. So this is all of the the traffic coming to your website, not just for the first time, because yeah, like as I mentioned, technically a user, especially if it's a blog or, a news site, we want to have returning visitors. Maybe not for every website, but that is technically, usually a goal, especially in the legal industry. Sometimes, clients are going to be potential new clients shopping around. They maybe had, viewed your law firm website once and, want to revisit it again after, looking at other competitors and, kind of honing in to make that final outreach. So yeah, this report is, it's very similar to the user acquisition, except it's just going to focus on the total amount of sessions. So yeah, we're going to probably see a pretty similar, channel attribution with direct is still, contributing the most. But what's interesting is that you can see there's 46,000 users, but there were 72,000 sessions. So meaning, visitors have come to the website, more than once as, a repeat visitor. So that's always kind of interesting to see. So yeah, so this basically shows very similar information. One thing I did want to note that's kind of new with analytics is the engagement rate. So this is, as Alex mentioned, some of the naming convention has changed. So this actually used to be called the bounce rate. Whereas if a visitor didn't explore more than one page on your website, they would technically cause a bounce to happen. So if 100 visitors went to your site and 80 of them didn't explore further, your bounce rate would be 80%. And so the higher that is, the more users are not staying on your site. So that's like an indication that definitely something is amiss and needs to be looked further into. But in GA4, engagement rate is actually the reciprocal of bounce rate. So if the website had a 20% bounce rate, they have an 80% engagement rate. So it is also interesting to see that, organic search traffic coming to the site or, through email tends to just engage with the site much better versus like a direct channel. So this is, definitely, as we mentioned, with like return on investment, if you're doing a lot of paid search, spending marketing dollars to attract clicks to the site, we're going to want to make sure that that traffic, is engaging with the site well and converting. And if it's not, then obviously you're just spending, you're wasting marketing dollars sending, traffic to the site. That's not going to ultimately result in a conversion. Moving on to the next section, we've got so engagement. So yeah, the first section of acquisition, how are users finding the site? And then it pretty much leads into the engagement. So what are users doing once they land on the site? So this report right here we love to use. It's the landing page report. And what this report specifies is what pages are actually bringing in traffic to the website. So as you can see, this backslash is that constitutes the home page, and then everything else you can kind of see. So these are the pages that are actually drawing traffic into into the site. So it's really important if you have particular blog posts that you want to market. Really, if you're doing a lot of content marketing efforts, we want to make sure that those pages are actually performing well and doing their job of bringing new traffic into the website. And then of course the ultimate goal is to convert. So this allows us to see, hey, this landing homepage over the last 28 days brought in that many sessions, and it ended with a 15% conversion rate, which is actually pretty phenomenal. So yeah, that definitely gives us insight into what pages are drawing traffic into the site. This other report right here, though, pages and screens, is more so what pages are being viewed once the visitor lands on the website. It does encompass the entrance pages, but it's more so once the visitor is on the website and clicking around, navigating to different attorney bios or different practice areas or the contact page, it's going to track all of the different views for that. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of people are still going back to the home page, but once they do arrive, they're checking out the men's apparel, looking at this family day, so on and so on, looking at the clearance section. So some of these pages may not necessarily be driving in the traffic, but once somebody is already exploring the website, this notates what pages are popular once they're visiting.
David, not to have you
Yeah.
backtrack, but if you can go back to the landing page, I think another thing that might be useful for people to know, because I get this question quite a bit, is like the not set, which is the second option, there on the
Right.
on the row that shows up, and we get asked that frequently, like what does the not set mean? And as everybody knows from past podcasts that I've done, I use analogies all the time. I would say that the analogy that I use for this one is, imagine it's like a filing cabinet where like data is all organized into different folders within that filing cabinet. If you had a folder that was essentially like not set, that basically means that it signifies that there's documents inside that, but they haven't really been categorized. So that means that, Google Analytics is essentially capturing information, but they just don't know what folder it necessarily needs to be in.
Yeah, I think what's happening is a lot of the newer browsers nowadays with data privacy, like Google Analytics is able to kind of, see that somebody is on the website, but they're capturing the referring source is what's being blocked from kind of like a privacy perspective. So yeah, the traffic is being accounted for, but they're not able to see really, the referring source or some of the pages that are drawing in the traffic.
Yeah.
A lot of times what you have to think about is when people are thinking about a redesign, for example, they'll say, oh, our site is fine. I don't think it needs to change because I like our homepage. But then I'll say to yourself, well, a lot of times attorney bios, as you can see with these pages, are what's most visited. And if that's the case, is your information presented clearly? Are your bios laid out well? Are all the attorney bios jumbled? Or, for example, if you find that your blogs are doing really well, does that present well? Do people see where they're going with these things? Does it look nice? That's an important thing for the aesthetics of it. But it's also important for your content marketing aspects as well, because I actually was talking to a firm about this a couple days ago. And when we were looking at their analytics, the most popular page was a blog article that they'd written in 1999. Now, sometimes you will have that really great content that will be what we call evergreen and just last forever. So like something that's like a child custody guide that you want to always be ranking and performing well. But if your best viewed piece of content is something from 1999, then it probably shows that the content that you're writing now is not performing. Now, whether it's not performing on an SEO level, whether it's not performing because it's not getting engagement, whether it's not performing because people can't find it. So a lot of times, like I said, it's important to think about what are these pages showing you, because A, do you need a new design? Or people looking at them and not clicking, maybe because the information is confusing, maybe it's because, it just doesn't look good. And then also what is doing well and how do you mimic what was doing well? So why did this blog post from 1999 do so well? What about it was appealing, and how can you extend it to other pieces of content that she'll write? So like I said, I don't want to dive into that too much because like I said, this is mostly understanding Google Analytics, but like I said, it is worth chiming in to just understand, okay, well, what do I do now that I see this data?
Yeah, no, great point. I mean, we'll touch a little bit later just on some of the important interface aspects, but I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, more the analysis side is this date range, which is a super important tool where you can, look at the last, any custom date range that you want and compare it to the previous time period. So if you really are, this definitely helps, bring out pages that are underperforming. So we could see, Google has some kind of stationary page where during this 3 month period, it was, getting tons and tons of traffic, but things had dramatically fallen off. So they had an 80%, decrease in traffic on that site. Sorry, on that particular page. So, I mean, maybe it was done purposefully. Maybe they're, trying to draw less attention to that page, but, if obviously that wasn't done on purpose, this would be, a way to use analytics to call out a page that's, underperforming and, looking further into why that may be happening. Yeah, one thing I did want to touch upon, so events. So when users are visiting the site, depending on how it is set up, they are triggering lots of different events when they are on the site, whether it's just a simple viewing of a page, the start of their session. But really what is great about this is you can track specific actions of your visitors. This does take a little bit more kind of customization, but we're able to track form submissions. We're able to track any clicks on a particular button. Let's say you have a link to a booking page that's off site, and you're interested to see how many people are actually going to this booking page from my website. So we could track all the clicks that are happening to that. Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's really unlimited what you can focus it on, whether you want to see how many people are clicking out to your social media sites, et cetera, et cetera. So these will all appear as a specific event name, and we can see, how often these are actually happening. Search Console. So Search Console is another Google product, and it's allows you, so one of the things I actually did want to touch upon doing the setup is that you can actually integrate Google Analytics 4 with other Google Analytics products to share and integrate information. And so Search Console is one of those, along with Google Ads. So all of the information that you would see within Google Search Console, which really it highlights all of the Google organic traffic that is coming to your website and some of the keywords that are driving traffic. It basically makes this like one-stop shopping. So you don't have to go to a different platform to look at all of this data. It's all pulled right into analytics. So this is the queries report. So this is going to tell us, what Google Analytics queries, searches are happening, how many clicks we are receiving, and other metrics related to that, like the click-through rate and your impressions. So moving on to this is the user report. This is really going to focus on the just attributions of your visitors. So sorry, that's the overview report, which, like I said, it's just kind of goes over some of the more generalized information, where this is definitely going to be more detailed. So the demographic detail report is going to start off with just like it's going to be countries. So where is your traffic coming from? Majority of their traffic is coming from the United States, Canada, India, Japan, and so on and so on. What's cool about this too, which I was going to kind of get into the next kind of segment, is that you can actually change this primary dimension. So it's by default, this report is set to the country, but let's say, hey, I'm curious about the cities. So you can change this dimension to a city, which obviously we're seeing some not set, but we can see, New York City is one of the, more popular ones sending traffic, San Francisco, San Jose, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this report is going to really be based upon the language that your visitors, cities, locations, things along those lines. And if you do have forget what it's called, it's basically allows you to capture, if they're opted in from their Google Analytics account, it will capture some demographic data, like male, female, and like some of the interests that they may have. So technology, they kind of have these categories sort of predefined. So that's always kind of interesting to see. And then last but not least is audiences. So this is actually pretty useful for segmenting certain audiences. if you wanted to look into the comparison between all of the visitors versus somebody who engaged with your visitors, it's going to kind of segment this traffic. And this is more so useful for Google Ads or retargeting, where you can reach out and kind of target just specific audience groups that you want to further engage with your website. So you make these specific types of audiences based upon the actions that they've taken, so that you can get more granular with the audiences that you want to target. Last section is the tech details. So this was actually, yeah, in the old Universal Analytics report. This was sort of the mobile user report, figuring out, yeah, this report's going to tell you all about the technical details about your visitors. So what browsers are they using? Yeah, we can kind of dive in right here. So what browsers are we using? We can see, like, let's say, we're getting a lot of visits on a specific browser, but it tends to have a really low conversion rate or a really low engagement rate. Maybe there is some kind of issue with the website on a particular browser, because they're not all created equally. So this will kind of help kind of further dive in if there maybe is something wrong with a particular browser. And then what's cool is, yeah, we can click into device category, and that's going to hone in on whether the visitor, yeah, is using a desktop device, mobile, tablet, or even, wow, now that's the first I've actually seen that as a smart TV. So that's actually really cool. So yeah, what's really cool about this too as well is just to compare. You can really see how different versions of your website are performing versus the other. With Google making a big push to mobile first, we obviously, more people are using their mobile device to find your website. And if you're seeing that your engagement rates, your conversion rates, everything related to engagement is a lot lower on your mobile device than your desktop, that's obviously going to be an indication that, we want to probably do a review from like a, user interface perspective to see, where we might be able to make some improvements.
That's worth chiming in with as well. This is something that comes across in my meetings with clients a lot too, because sometimes a client will still be so used to pulling up their website on their computer and say, "Oh yeah, my website looks great. It's 20 years old, 15 years old, even 12 years old." And they're like, "Oh, it looks great on the computer. We're fine." But what I say to them is, you have to realize that a lot more clients are using their phone, they're using their tablet, they're double screening, which means they're looking at the TV while looking for your website and things like that. So it's important to realize that if you look at this data, you can see, well, a lot of our traffic is coming from phones or things like that. And if that's the case, once again, that may be time for a design update, because like I said, if your phone does not look, if your website does not look the same way as it does on the desktop as its phone, a lot of times it's because your site is too old and it needs to mimic it. So something like, again, we always hope that you design your website with PaperStreet. But if you don't, make sure that when you're talking to your developer or your designer, that it says, okay, is this mobile responsive? Is it going to appear well on a tablet? Is it going to appear well on a phone? I've never thought about a smart TV, but sure, it's a thing. Will it look good on even a TV? It's something to keep in mind, and make sure that your website does work on multiple platforms, because again, yes, it's true that if you're one of those big mergers and acquisitions law firms and things like that, a lot of the time people is going to be using a desktop. But if you're a personal injury lawyer, if you're a family lawyer, if you're doing anything that relates to more of the general public, chances are they're not just using their computer to search for you. So it's, like I said, it's very important to look at this data, and particularly, like I said, use it as a tool to say, hey, is my website technologically where it needs to be? Is it time for a design update? Because it looks okay on a computer, but I'm not reaching 40% of my audience, 30% of my audience with a good cohesive design. So like I said, that's also very important to consider when you're looking at your data and things like that.
Right. Yeah, I did just want to touch upon where, yeah, I mean, analytics really kind of calls out the red flags in a way. It obviously is going to take definitely like expertise, design, content, SEO to kind of further evaluate pages for improvement opportunities. But yeah, I mean, really, Google Analytics is just it's capturing all that data for us to really see, spot those kind of red flags and improvement opportunities.
Great. Thanks, David.
Yep.
All right, let's move on a little bit further. So why would you need some metrics other than Google Analytics? We've talked about all of this. We've talked about why Google Analytics is the best, but we do want to just offer that caveat that Google Analytics should not be the only thing that you use to measure your website's performance. So Alex, would you like to talk about that for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very contingent or subjective to what and why somebody actually is looking up other information. There are products out there that, track SEO information and, there's a whole host of them, from Ahrefs to SEMrush to agency analytics to, a whole host that are there. And there some of them are great products, and they give you a lot of insight into how well things are functioning within your site. David mentioned how there is now Google Search Console that I shouldn't say now, it always has, but it died a little bit more accessible on the new Google Analytics on how you can actually access that. But I mean, that's obviously another free tool that has come from Google. So there's a lot of really good information that you can gain and ascertain from those places. And yeah, again, I think it's very subjective to what the goal is of a firm, what they're really trying to look at. Again, if you're looking at something where it's competitor analysis, or how does your website compare to another for how many links you might have. One of the other products I just mentioned will do that a little bit better and kind of focus in on that. That's not the goal and the function of something like Google Analytics, where again, Google Analytics is very selfishly about your own site. So, and as David just mentioned, it's kind of like almost like being able to see and highlight what are missing opportunities, but what are some things that are working well, So again, I mean, it's just important to know the difference between them. There's obviously other things outside of just like let's call it the insight side of just traffic and leaning on the traffic itself. There's things that are out there for reviewing speed, like tests of your site and how well that's going. And within that, there is like the Web Core Vitals that can be looked at. And for those that might not know what Web Core Vitals is, it's just kind of a fancy term that Google uses, where it's essentially metrics that measure real world user experience. Of like things like loading performance and the interactivity of a site and like the visual stability of a page. And so those are really what it kind of boils down to fundamentally. They just call it the umbrella term of Web Core Vitals, but there are applications or there's websites that are out there like pagespeed.web.dev, which is kind of a lot to say. But yeah, that kind of outlines where and how the functionality of your website is working on like a user experience and how it does on and performs on a mobile side versus desktop. So yeah, there's a whole host of products that are out there. When you get more on the marketing side, again, for us, one of the biggest main focuses and the main goals is really like honing in on the conversion side. From there, there's call tracking metrics that we absolutely love. It takes out all ambiguity of where are you getting the return on investment, where are you getting that value of a traffic source, and then how did they convert. So things, products like CallRail, which again we're big fans of. They can dynamically track where phone calls are coming from and what that attribution source is. So did it come from organic? Did it come from paid? Did it come from referral traffic? The contact form itself can be tracked. And then even, chat features are able to be tracked as well. And so, that to us is invaluable because, not to sound cliche, but it's kind of allows us to work smarter, not harder. We can then see where that specifically is coming from, where the firm might be getting the best ROI, and then, we hone in on that. That being said, we leverage very greatly off of the information that we might get from the end result, if you will, like where a conversion comes from, and we can kind of backtrack, reverse funnel where that then led to in Google Analytics. So we might be able to like lean on both products to really hone in on what's functioning the best. And then there's other aspects of it too. Again, on the agency analytics side, which again we're fans of. That allows on like keyword reporting for SEO, on the paid side, even just logging in directly on Google Ads which is very specifically on what's called the auction insights report. You can see how often your ad is showing up. But again, all that we're talking about and the reason why we're bringing up all these other reports is they kind of dynamically work in and are integrated with Google Analytics and how we can kind of circle back to that and leverage all that off that information. So it's actually quite amazing and pretty fantastic that we're able to then hone in on what works the best. That's a big driving force for us here at PaperStreet, where it's not necessarily just about the exposure or the rankings and not necessarily just about the traffic and how much traffic is coming in, but where is it coming from? What is converting? What is the best? What's quality? And then focusing in and doubling down, so to speak, on the quality conversions and the quality traffic that you want. All those other applications combined with Google Analytics makes for a wonderful sort of situation. So.
As Alex mentioned briefly, like I said, always consider the technological aspects of things. So, there are tools out there, for example, to test your ADA compliance, which is an important thing, and that's not something that's in at Google Analytics. So, like I said, a lot of times Google Analytics gives you a great snapshot of what it is that you're looking at, but there may be hidden pieces of the puzzle, which is why, like I said, we always encourage that you possibly, again, choose PaperStreet, but if not, work with a marketing agency that will suggest these other tools that you should be looking at, or can take into consideration, because like I said, even your email program may have some data that's not necessarily reflected in Google Analytics. So it's always, like I said, Google Analytics is critical as a key component of your marketing tracking, your overall site health tracking and things like that. But do keep in mind that there are other platforms that you should be looking at. Like I said, good start, great start is Google Analytics, but just keep in mind that there are some other things that maybe just that you don't even realize you need to look at. All right, David, I think you were last up on our list. You had some last information to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I just thought it would be good to go over just some basic, important areas of the Google Analytics interface. Just things that we constantly use to kind of modify reports, things, and just thought it was, kind of worth sharing. So there's, quite a handful of them. One of the first ones I like to use is this search functionality right here. So it's basically a search slash filtering. So as you can see, when we go to pages and screens, it's going to show everything available. But let's say we just want to hone in on pages that are maybe apparel related. So what you can do is simply just type in the URL that you're going to want to kind of filter down to, and then there we go. We can kind of see exactly just the URLs that are under the apparel section. I mean, we could even take it just kind of a step further if we want to just focus in on just pages that have for men's clothing, so things like that. Another way to do this as well is kind of adding a filter. It does make it a little bit more complicated because you actually need to select the dimension, meaning the primary data that's being shown. So you could do this kind of in another way where we'll select the page path and screen class exactly matches, and then you could kind of type in a value here. And I guess what's nice about the filtering is it allows you more customization. So you can, tell it, I don't, only show things that don't contain, this word, or only show, URLs that match this. So it allows you some more flexibility with your filtering to kind of hone in further on, specific information in your report. Another important area, which I sort of alluded to in the beginning, is the date range. I mean, it doesn't get any more. This tool is one of the most important things in analytics, being able to, see how traffic is performing over any customized date range that you want. And then, I mean, even more important is the compare functionality, because looking at just a month of data is just a month of data. But when you compare that to the previous time period or even the previous year, we're able to really see the differences in how pages are performing, or just the website, in general. So that's obviously a huge feature. And so, when you click on the compare functionality, you can have it basically, the preceding period, the same period last year, or even set up a complete customization if you want to compare, the month of May 2024 to the month of, January 2024, things like that. I sort of, yeah, alluded to this earlier as well, but you can change the primary dimension, which is sometimes useful. So let's say you wanted to see, instead of the URL of the page, you wanted Google Analytics to display the page name. Maybe that's just easier for you to understand which pages are performing well. You can use this drop down to change things like that. And then one other really cool feature is this plus button right here. This plus button allows you to add what's called a secondary dimension. So these are the predefined, dimensions for the report, views, users. But let's say you're like, hey, I'm curious where, what session, what medium are these, pages, bringing in? How's the traffic finding us? So yeah, we can basically add this into there, and it's going to add in another secondary dimension to kind of just help give you more information about the data. So we can see, at first we were seeing, okay, how is the homepage performing in general? But now we can see how does the homepage perform for visitors that came to the website through organic specifically. So this kind of helps segment data even further. And then last but not least is sharing reports. So, oh no, sorry, well, you can share, but also, sorry, you know what? It's not allowing me because of our permissions. But there is usually like an export share button where you can export into, a PDF or a CSV or Google Sheets. So if you want to share with, somebody, a client or, another employee.
Yeah, I think to David's point, the sharing feature is great because obviously for those that either don't have the time to log in or just might not remember their password, or they candidly don't know where to go, you can easily export reports and then send them over. Yeah, I think as we can see and as David has shown wonderfully, it's a rabbit hole of how in depth this goes. I think Google Analytics is a deep dive, but I think a lot of this is very important on the points that we did go over and some of the highlights and the features that it has.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, this is meant to be just something for you to get familiarized with something like that. And if you really do care this much about your marketing, and like I said, you're trying to do all of this on your own, we do hope that these informations are helpful to you. If you visit paperstreet.com, we also have some articles we've published about what to look at for Google Analytics and things like that. And always, you can always reach out to us and just ask us some questions. We've had clients even just ask us to install Google Analytics for you. So like I said, it's important to understand this to the best of your ability. And like I said, it's always good to have an idea of what's happening. And we say this with our SEO clients too. Like you don't have to be a backlink expert to understand SEO, but as long as we do encourage that you do have some understanding of Google Analytics so that whenever you're talking to your marketing agency, you can understand their report and what they're saying. And like I said, even when you're looking at your data, you can kind of get a feel for, hey, I'm not getting traffic from SEO, or my pay-per-click traffic is not coming in, or my engagement rate is like 10. There are those certain things, like I said, that we've covered in this show that will hopefully help you identify what are some problem areas as opposed to what, is working well for the firm. So, David, I think you did an excellent job of screen sharing. You were a great teacher. Alex, we really appreciated your feedback. And
No
thanks
problem.
to our listeners. We'll be back next month. And like I said, check us out, whether you listen to us via the podcast for this show or the video on YouTube. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.